Hey everyone, Mr. Toast here. Just want to let you know you can watch the podcast and interact with other viewers live on twitch.tv/convictedtoast. Enjoy the podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Mixed Media with Mr. Rager and Mr. Toast. Tonight we wanted to talk about some A24 horror films. We picked out 4 that we watched throughout this week. So let's just get into it.
Well, 3 that we watched throughout this
Yeah,
week and 1 that we just kinda tacked on
because
because we both.
we've seen it. We saw it not too long ago, both of us. So
Yeah. So, I think we're gonna start the discussion with that one first, which is The Lighthouse.
yep. Which we
We watched.
mentioned on the podcast before, but we're gonna talk about it a little bit more in depth this time.
Yeah, so with the Lighthouse, when did we watch it, you know?
It was like it was like in the middle of January, I think.
Oh, so it's been that long?
I think so. Been a
Man,
while.
maybe we should've rewatched it.
I'm sure we're fine.
Should be, but I didn't know it was that
The Yeah,
long.
the details stick around though. It's a pretty memorable movie. So
It is, and that's what, something that I think it'd be said for most A24 horror and non-horror films included.
just in general, A24 has been a powerhouse.
Yeah, I completely agree. I've gone all the way out to Pittsburgh to see premieres of their movies. They're one of the best studios putting shit out.
Yeah,
They kind of, for those of you who don't know, I should give an introduction to A24. A24 is one of the newest production companies.
yeah.
It was founded by a guy named Daniel Katz in 2012, and they just basically started making movies. They were giving a lot of filmmakers who haven't made things in a long time or newer filmmakers a place where they could pretty much create their vision and have it be untainted by studio interference. So Greta Gerwig got her big start, who is now the director of Barbie with A24 when she made Lady Bird. Barry Jenkins with Moonlight, which won Best Picture. Just tons and tons of filmmakers have come out, and the one that we're going to be talking about first with The Lighthouse is Mr. Robert Eggers, who this was his second film ever, and his second A24 film. He had done the Vitch before this, and The Lighthouse was his follow-up film released in 2019.
2019?
2019.
Yeah, 19.
Yes, 2019. It
Uh,
stars Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe.
Yeah, it's the way that the film is shot as well, doing full black and white for the entire thing is very I love the aesthetic it kind of gives off with the whole story. It gives a lot of atmosphere and a lot of like it's a very unique touch.
That is a really big thing with A24 is kind of letting the filmmakers kind of just be weird, letting them have their own style, letting them have their own. Sorry, I'm pouring water.
That's fine.
Letting them have their own sort of flair to the movies instead of it just being, studio interference. And that's what I think makes all of the horror films that we're going to be talking about tonight so special is that they all are very, very, very different films, and they all pretty much take place in completely different decades, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, we except for 2 of the ones that we watched, they're kind of close together.
Which ones?
Uh hold on. Let me make sure I'm not mistaking myself.
Are you thinking about Climax?
No, okay, sorry. I so we have bodies on the list, and for some reason, like I was thinking of 2 separate scenes in the movie and thinking of them in 2 different movies.
Oh, I got you. That's fine. So the lighthouse was this idea that Robert Eggers had, um, based on this thing that kind of happened in real life, where there was a lighthouse in Wales in the 1800s, and there were 2 wickies that worked there, both named Thomas. They were trapped there during this huge storm,
Yep.
and when it cleared, This is the in real life story, not the movie story. There was no sign that the men had ever been there at all. There was no signs of struggle, no signs that they were ripped out to sea. And they were like, "Oh, a big wave could have went over the island," but in reality, it there was no damage done by a wave. They just vanished.
Yeah.
Um, so he was really interested in doing something with that concept, and he kind of incorporated a lot of H.P. Lovecraft, a lot of surrealism,
Yeah.
Greek myths even into the
Yeah, it's
story.
the big thing is like you don't really see like Greek myth used for horror, at least not nowadays. So having it pulled in and used as a reference, like because we get a little bit of H.P. Lovecraft kind of stuff, we get Greek, like Greek horror as well, and then a lot of it's psychological as well.
Yeah, a lot of it is very psychological. He plays with a lot of different types of horror. The film takes place in the 1890s, which is really cool. This is a very interesting period to see, and it works really well. So, for a brief discussion of the overall plot, it's basically these two lighthouse wikis, Ephraim Winslow, who we find out later is really Thomas Howard, and Thomas Wake are both on this lighthouse. They've been sent there to be the keepers for a period of time until the next two come to relieve them. And as they're kind of, doing their daily task, making sure the lighthouse is good, some weird supernatural shit, or if you don't believe it's supernatural shit, just some weird shit in their heads starts to transpire,
Hmm.
including a mermaid and some really interesting thing.
Yeah, it's very interesting because there's a I'm trying to think of like how to go into it, like because it starts out and it's pretty inconspicuous,
Hmm.
and then it starts to open up a lot more, like where at first the characters like they're on this job together, they don't even know their names yet, like they haven't introduced each other to like their own names to each other yet, and that's like it's probably like what, like halfway through the movie that you finally learn their names.
Yeah, yeah. Well, no, it's not that. It's about like 20-25 minutes in when they're sitting down to dinner for the first time,
Hmm.
and they're talking about it, and they get drunk a lot in the movie. They're just kind of doing their doing their thing.
Yeah.
So how it starts, they're doing their thing. I kind of talked about that a little bit. So Winslow discovers this, which is Robert Pattinson's character. He has this like mermaid thing that he finds. It's like a wooden thing, and it looks like a mermaid. And
Yeah.
he keeps it with him. He finds it in the bed that he's provided there, and Thomas Wake is like very very pushy of him, like trying to get him to do his job and things like that, and taking like fucking kerosene tanks upstairs and painting the just doing all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And Willem Dafoe's character Thomas Wake, he's very adamant about the fact that he has to be the one to go up to the
Yeah,
lighthouse.
he's like, I take the night shift, I watch the light.
And we see him up there a couple of times early on where he's just completely naked, just sitting in front of this light, and
Yep.
it's he's just like mesmerized by it. And Winslow, like, he starts to hallucinate these sea monsters and things, and he's just like it's really weird. He's not sure if he's going crazy or if these things are actually happening to him,
Yeah.
and he takes this wooden like statue of the mermaid, and he takes it into his private quarters and masturbates to it. And he's just like picturing like a real mermaid, but is there a real mermaid? And he's just he's very confused, and he starts at this point he starts to get bothered by a seagull,
Yeah.
and it starts like picking on him and just like bullying him a little bit. This seagull like flies overhead, and he's throwing shit at. He's like, "Get out of here!" And they have dinner that night. And we should mention that Robert Pattinson's character initially does not want to. He doesn't want to drink at all.
Yeah.
And Robert Pattinson's character, he just like he's like, I'm tainted. Like I can't drink.
Yeah.
So we get like a little bit of an idea that there's some background there, that he has, maybe a history of drinking or something bad happened the last
Yeah.
time he drank, and he just doesn't want to do it. And Willem Dafoe's like, "All right, good, drink the water," and he drinks it, just like spits it out. It's just nasty, nasty water. He's like, "You're gonna have to tend to the cistern out there," and Robert Pattinson starts like having a little bit of the alcohol, and there's this really, really good scene, and, it's when they're eating dinner, and Willem Dafoe's like, "You shouldn't spar with a gull," or something like that, and he's like,
Yeah.
"It's bad luck to kill a seabird." And, Robert Pattinson kinda laps it off, and Willem Dafoe just smacks him across the face, and he's just like, "Bad luck to kill a seabird." And that line has a lot. I have a lot of personal connection to it because after I watched this for the first time, I just could not help quoting that line over and over again. We were picking up my girlfriend from the airport, and I remember I was in the car, and I just kept going, "Bad luck to kill a seabird," and she's just like, "What the fuck are you saying?" And it's like, "It's bad luck to kill a seabird," and it's just, oh, that line is so good,
Yeah.
and he like there's reasoning behind it too. Like he explains to him that the gulls are reincarnated sailors, and they kind of start to talk about the last wiki that was there before Robert Pattinson. If you want to talk about that a little bit. Oh wait, we got a chatter.
Oh yeah.
How's it going? It's going good, Trent. Welcome in.
Thanks for being here. Appreciate you. What were you mentioning? Sorry.
Oh, if you wanted to talk about the wiki before Robert Pattinson's character. The one he had before, like the story that he tells him.
Uh oh shit. I can't remember the story.
Oh,
That's
okay.
actually slipped my mind.
It's not a lot. He basically just tells him that he died. He lost his mind,
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
and he kind of like gaslights him, and he's kind of like telling him,
It's kind of like that might happen to you.
I don't know. That happens a lot
Yeah.
in this movie. There
Yeah.
is a lot of that, and I hate the word gaslight. There's a good joke in Bodies, Bodies, Bodies about gaslighting actually,
Yeah.
and but it is a word that could be used to describe a lot of things in the movie.
Yeah.
Um, so it's the day before, like they're gonna go home. They're getting ready to go, and Winslow, he's kind of out and he's doing his daily chores, and he sees a gull dead inside the cistern. And it's really cool, the effect, because it's in black and white, and you just see the blood like kind of spreading out from the
Yeah.
dead gull. And he's just like, "God damn it!" And the other gull that was bothering him comes down and starts like pecking at him, and he just picks it up and just starts smashing it into the cistern.
Yep.
And it sounds fucked, but it's really funny in the moment.
It
Like
plays off as a very comedic moment because like he does the whole thing and then he just stops for a sec.
yeah, he just like it's just beating the gull off this cistern. It is so despicable, but like it's oh my god, it's hard to explain unless you've seen the movie, just the sheer, like, brutality Robert Pattinson puts into killing this seagull.
Right.
Trent says, "Gaslight, made up word." That's a Bodies, Bodies, Bodies reference. We will
Yeah.
be talking about that tonight.
I appreciate that
Um,
you just drop your Twitch Prime in the
I
middle of the podcast.
I have your stream up, and, it gave me an ad, and it pissed me off, so I resubbed.
Fair enough.
Um, so he kills it, and then as soon as he walks away, we get like this shot up on top of the house that they're staying at, and it's one of those old timey things they had on farms that spins around. I don't know how
Oh,
to
like the
describe.
like compass kind of thing. You mean?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
like an outside one, and just like the direction of the wind, and the direction of the wind just absolutely shifts.
Yeah. Like it
Like
spins well
right
for a
away.
second, then just points in one direction.
Yeah, a complete opposite direction of where it was. So it immediately cuts, and the storm is really bad, and they're like, "Fuck, I don't know if we're gonna be able to get out of here tomorrow." And they're like, "Oh, come on, it's our last night. It'll pass by the morning. Let's get drunk." So they're getting drunk together. I can't remember if it's this one or later on when they're dancing together, but I love that
Uh,
I love that scene.
I
I
think
can't
I think it's after this one. Like it's just after
Okay,
maybe, like the next night.
okay. So they get drunk, and the next day, oh, it's so gross. Robert Pattinson's character has their chamber pot, which is where they don't have toilets. It's 1890 in
Yeah,
a lighthouse. So he's going out there with it to dump it, and he like throws it off this thing, and the wind just throws it right back in his face, and he's just screaming, and he's disgusted, and he finds the body of a mermaid, and it wakes up and just starts screeching at him, and he's running away, and he's just like freaking out, and he gets back there, and Willem Dafoe's like, "Storm spoiled all of our rations," and he's just like, "Oh my god," and he's like, "Well, it's fine. Our ride out of here is only a day late." And then this is where the gaslighting really starts. Willem Dafoe's like, "Has it been only a day? How long have we been here, do you reckon? 2 weeks? 2 days? 2
yeah.
hours?" Like, just going through this whole thing, just, like, absolutely confusing the fuck out of Robert Pattinson.
Yeah, and the thing I love about it is that like at the same point, because the movie's kind of been jumping around the days as it goes, we get to the point where like even now, him raising this question, we're also sitting there as the viewer going, "How long has it been?"
Yeah, you really or it's like 2 unreliable narrators.
Yeah,
You don't know who to believe, and Robert Pattinson doesn't fucking know, and does Willem Dafoe know? We don't know.
yeah. It kind of turns into the Spider-Man meme of two Spider-Men pointing at each other, and it's like you're gaslighting me, and it's like no, you're gaslighting me.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. So they are like, "Okay, we've got some rations," and they go down, and they're looking for him, and it's literally just alcohol. So we get this, like, kinda I don't wanna say a montage, but it's just them, like, drinking, and then they're dancing, and it's weird because it transitions between them being, like, really violent towards each other, like hitting each other, and then at one point, they're, like, really close, like, face to face, like they're about to kiss, and it's so weird, and, like we start to really see Robert Pattinson start to crack. He wants to see what's in the light, and this is like he starts to like really be like, "Yeah, I wanna see what he's like, what's going on up there that he is obsessed with it." He even like kind of thinks about murdering him in his sleep,
Hmm.
and he like is going down and he checks the lobster traps, and he sees the previous wiki, and he's just like, "Oh my god." So they get drunk again after that, and Robert Pattinson reveals to Willem Dafoe, "Hey, I'm Thomas Howard." He's like, "No, I'm Thomas." He's like, "I'm also Thomas. I lied. I took the name of Ephraim Winslow." And it's revealed that when he was in Canada working, that was a foreman that he had, and these logs like spilled over and killed him, and he kind of just like left him for dead. He didn't help him,
Yep.
and he just left. He just took off and got this other job. And you just hear Willem Dafoe, like, kind of echoing throughout the house, like, "Why'd you spill your bean?"
Why'd you spill your beans?
Yeah, and he's just like, "Okay, that like, I've had it." He, like, runs to leave, and Willem Dafoe's there with an axe and just destroys their lifeboat, and he's just, like, freaking out, and he goes back, and they're all sitting in there, and, they're looking at each other, and Willem Dafoe's like, "You smashed the boat up." He's like, "What? You smashed the boat up." And you're just like, "What the fuck is
Yep.
happening?" He's literally just, like, completely turning it around. He's like, "No, you smashed the boat." It's just the storm's bearing down, and there's no alcohol left.
Yeah.
They take turpentine and honey, and mix it together, and they start drinking that. And, while they're getting drunk or whatever, they have another, like, fine night, and they get into this argument that I do believe I forgot to talk about earlier, where Willem Dafoe delivers one of the best monologues, not just in his career, but in film history. I mean,
Yeah.
it is incredible.
Yeah,
Um,
it's so good. I'm pretty do you have it memorized?
I have parts of it
Okay.
memorized.
Because so the whole monologue is like 2 minutes long,
Yeah,
and
it's crazy.
what's very impressive is that Willem Dafoe does not blink giving
No,
during the delivery of the monologue.
he doesn't stop yelling, and it's not like a normal, like, monologue where it's just basic, you know, basic shit. It's like he's like they're talking about, like, their food, and, Ephraim Winslow, he's just like, "Your food sucks," and Willem Dafoe, like, gets pissed. He's like, "Tell me you're fond of me lobster," and he's just like, "No, I want a steak.
Yeah.
If I had a steak, I'd fuck it." And they're really drunk, and Willem it, like, really gets under Willem Dafoe's skin,
Yeah,
and
he's like at the point where he's like, "You're fond of me, lobster. I seen it. You're fond of me, lobster."
he just starts it with, like, "Let Neptune strike ye dead, Winslow," and he yells like, "Hark, Trike, hark," and, like, there's lightning striking outside. It's so good, and he just goes through this whole thing, like, talking about, like, the most horrible way to die, like, that he wants like, getting, like, pulled apart by, like, sea creatures. Um, it's it's so good, and I also like, the line that he says whenever they, toast together, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I have that one memorized. Whenever they're about to start drinking, Willem Dafoe says, "Should pale death with treble dread make the ocean caves our bed, God who hears the surges roll, deign to save our suppliant soul." And it's so good. They got the dialogue in this film, like, perfect, absolutely perfect. Um, so the next day, um, he wakes up and he finds Willem Dafoe's logbook. And in this book, he like criticized him as a drunk and just completely useless, doesn't do any of his chores. He back talks, all this horrible shit. And it's like at the end, it's like recommendation, termination without pay or severance without pay. That's what it is.
Yeah.
They're like they start arguing and he's pissed. He's like, "That's a lie," and they start fighting. And while he's hitting Willem Dafoe, he hallucinates the mermaid like under him, and then he hallucinates Willem Dafoe as this sea creature, and then he sees him as the Winslow that died at the log thing, and then we get this amazing shot where it's like straight out of a Greek painting where
Yeah.
Willem Dafoe is like this Proteus figure, and he's got these 2 beams of light coming out of his eyes right on him, and he's, like, completely naked, and he's just standing there like, oh, it's
Yeah, and he's
so
hitting like this
good.
it's a very like particular like pose where he's like looking down with this like flexed kind of arm and shoulder sticking out, and it's very cool.
And, he's just yeah, it's awesome. That is my favorite shot in the movie, where he's just, like, got the beams of light coming out of his eyes, and, uh, Ephraim just keeps beating him into submission, and he, like, makes him like a dog, and he's like, "Follow me, dog." And he takes him outside, and he's burying him alive, and Willem Dafoe's, like, giving this monologue about the light while he's being covered in dirt, and there's, like, dirt on his eyes, there's
Yep.
dirt going in his mouth, and he just doesn't stop giving this monologue, and, he grabs the keys, he goes and he gets a cigarette, and Willem Dafoe flies in with an axe and hits him with it, and Robert Pattinson, like, kinda gets it away from him and then just fucking kills him. And then we get to the ending with, Robert Pattinson, he's climbing the lighthouse, he's finally gonna see what's in it, and he goes up to the top, and it is just this bright, blinding light, and then the film, like, looks distorted, the sound's distorted, he's just sitting there screaming, and the audio is completely muffled, and he's oh my god, he's just screaming, and it goes on for, like, 45 seconds, and we see him fall down the steps, and then we cut to him, he's laying naked on the rocks, and his eye is, like, been pecked out, and there's a bunch of gulls, like, his stomach is completely, like, his chest stomach area is
Yeah,
completely
and
cut.
his entrails are just hanging out.
Yep, and the gulls are just sitting there kinda pecking at him, and it's such a great ending, and it's definitely something that's kind of left up to interpretation. I mean, there are a lot of people that, talk about it, being, a Greek thing, Greek myth, but there's elements of sea myths in there that they used to say.
Yep.
There's even a lot of people that, talk about, like, the sexuality in the film, that, like, the phallic imagery of the lighthouse and the shots of the 2 together, and, they actually asked Robert Eggers in an interview, about that, and he said, "Am I saying these characters are gay? No. However, I'm not saying they're not either. Forget about the complexities of human sexuality or their particular inclination. I'm more about questions than answers."
Yeah.
And it's so good, and I it's there are a lot of those kind of themes in it too, and it really is up to the viewer and what the viewer believes is going on, and, is it a prophecy about Proteus? Is it this they're just going crazy and none of this happened?
Yeah.
It really is left to interpretation and what you believe.
It's like,
And,
for all we know, the ship came, picked him up, and this was all just a horrible dream.
yeah, it could have been, or they could have just both lost their minds and killed each other.
Yep.
Like, we do not know. And,
We'll never know if he
Ron
was actually fond of his lobster.
no. Well, he admits at the end of the monologue, he says, "Have it your way. I do like your lobster."
He's like, I
And
like your cooking.
just just a little bit of a complaint that I wanna get into here about people. Um, not all people, but it's hard to describe. A24 films are very, very divisive.
Yeah.
Critics seem to absolutely eat them up. The audience like, Uncut Gems, a lot of people consider Uncut Gems to be like Adam Sandler's, like, his magnum opus. It's got, like, a 91 critic score. Give me a guess, Mr. Toast, of what you think the audience score is for Uncut Gems.
Probably like, I don't know, 65?
52.
52. Okay.
Yeah, 52, and that's, like, a lot of people consider that to be one of his best. So it's people just don't vibe with the
I think,
non-simple narratives, I
yeah,
guess.
I think a big part of it is that a lot of A24 films leave a lot of things up to interpretation rather than just outright, hey, this is how it is. This is exactly what like the director is trying to tell you or what the story is trying to tell you. And it leaves it more open-ended so that you can draw your own conclusions. Like, imagine how boring it would be if you watch Pulp Fiction and they just tell you what's in the briefcase.
Exactly, exactly. Um, my favorite theory about what's in the briefcase is, Elvis's golden suit. That's a popular one. Tarantino likes that one too.
Yeah.
So what was the next one we watched?
Uh,
Well, first
we
was it
we
Climax?
watch Climax next.
Okay, so it was Climax. Ooh, this one's gonna be really interesting to talk about.
Yeah, because this is not your traditional horror movie.
No, I don't know if we should give a warning before this, before we talk about Climax.
Maybe. Yeah, there's a lot of material in here that might be a bit disturbing.
Yeah, Climax, for those of you viewers in the stream, um, those of you that are audio listeners, we love you. YouTube listeners, we love you too. Anything like that, we probably will put a timestamp, or this is just a warning. Just kind of skim until you hear us stop talking about Climax and move on to Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. If you are sensitive to discussions around drugs, um, horrible I don't even know, mental illness. Um, I I guess we're gonna talk about the movie and spoilers anyway, so this is a spoiler for Climax, but if you are sensitive to violence against pregnant women, um, that will be discussed with Climax. Climax is very rough. I love the film and I love what it stands for, but it is a very rough film, and we completely understand if you do need to skim through this,
Yeah.
and not to it. That is completely understandable. This is a very rough horror film. It is not rough in traditional terms for horror. It is a very different type of
Yeah,
horror.
there's not like it's not an overtly gory film in any way. It's just the material that it handles is very there's a lot of real world element to it that maybe some of you could have been exposed to, and that might be something that you don't want to, be exposed to again.
Yeah, exactly. So, this is a Gaspar Noé film, and to give you guys a little bit of backstory into Gaspar Noé, um, he is a rough individual himself. I think personally he's a genius. I do think that his films are very difficult. Um, I don't think any of his films are easy to sit through. He does a lot of things that are avant-garde, a lot of things that are outside the box. He tackles really, really rough things. One of his first movies, Irreversible, which is the one that put him on the map, is a movie that is told in complete opposite order. Um, I won't get into too many spoilers for Irreversible because it's not our discussion, but Irreversible is about the revenge of a woman who was raped, and it is very intense. Um, it is a very good movie. It's just very intense, very hard to watch. A lot of dark stuff. He is a very dark director, and a lot of his films are very dark. He also directed a Travis Scott music video. I don't know why.
Just had to
So
mention that.
yeah, the Climax is really interesting. At the Cannes 2018 Film Festival, it won Best Art Film. It also won Best Film at Cannes, I do believe, or maybe it was nominated for the Palme d'Or. I can't remember if it won or not. I think it was. Um, I know it won a festival of some kind
Hmm.
for best. Uh, so Climax is the story of these French dancers. It takes place in the winter of 1996. Um, these dancers are, they're doing their routine. There's a long take. Well, I guess we should talk a little bit about the interviews first.
Yeah.
The film opens on these interviews, and it's basically this lady kind of talking to the dancers, kind of like a little impromptu interview, like talking about dance and their lives. And she's like, "So, what would you do if you couldn't dance?" To this one girl, and she says, "Suicide." And it's hitting you right off the bat. You're like, okay, this is a very interesting group of people.
Yeah, because like the people that are so invested in what they do that like they would go that far where without it they wouldn't want to live.
Um, so they have this huge sequence at the beginning. It is a long take that lasts almost 40 minutes where it shows their entire dance routine, and then it goes from character to character, like, and they're all just like shooting the shit. There's this one guy's like obsessed with sex. There's a lot of talk among the characters about drugs and sex, like a lot of talk among the characters about those topics. And they're talking about this or that. They're like, oh man, like she's pretty hot, or he's pretty hot. And they're talking about drugs that they did, and then they start doing this other dance routine, and like 45 minutes in, you get the opening credits.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because the interviews and like the dialogue between the characters, it introduces a lot about the people that we're going to be witnessing throughout the film, and then After the opening credits start in that 45-minute timestamp, we like the whole movie just shifts. It's no longer focusing on like the relationships, like the people talk, like the dialogue is taking a backseat at this point, and it's more visual.
Hmm. So, um, dancers, as they're like dancing during the opening credits, they kind of start to behave strangely. They're getting agitated, they're getting confused, they're wandering around weird, and they're like, "Man, what the hell is going on?" And they realize that the sangria they're all drinking, they had this punch, was spiked with a hallucinogenic drug. And they assume LSD,
Yeah,
and they go to this one girl who's a mother. I think her name is Emmanuel,
I
and
think so.
they're like, "You made the punch, you did this," and she's like, "No, I drank it, and I'm dealing with it too." And they're like, it's just this big game of who did it, and they point out this guy named Omar, and it's oh, this is so weird. I should have put a trigger warning up there for incest as well because there's incest in this. Um, Basically, this guy is jealous of this other guy that's like dating his sister, and he's like, this guy did not drink at all, and he is a um I forget I think it's called a teetotaler. Am I saying that right? Teetotaler.
What is it?
It's a teetotaler. Teetotalism. It's the practice of
Proletarian?
huh?
Proletarian? Is it? I don't
No,
know.
it's Teet. It's basically the practice of not abstaining from, and
Yeah,
he is that, and he didn't drink it because he doesn't drink, and they're like, he did it, he did it, he did it, and they just throw him out into this.
yeah. It's during this massive like blizzard too.
Yeah, and they're like, we need to call the cops. They're like, how the cops gonna get here? It's snow. So the mom absolutely freaks out because she sees her kid. She has this son with her named Tito,
Yeah.
and he is drinking the sangria, and she's like, fuck. So she grabs him and puts him in this electrical room and locks the door. And we just get all these shots of the characters kind of dealing with it. And Selva, who is our main character, she goes into this back room with her friend Lou. And she's like, I'm not feeling good. She's like, oh, did you drink the punch too? And she's like, no. Can you keep a secret? I'm pregnant. And there's this other woman named Dom who is like severely under the influence of the drug. She had
Yeah.
multiple glasses of sangria. She accuses Lou of spiking the drink, and she's like, "No, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. I'm pregnant." And this is where we get, oh god, it's so hard.
It's a very
Um,
hard scene to watch.
yeah, she she starts kicking her in the stomach, punching her in the stomach, and we see Lou kind of sit up, and she's just like gagging and weeping, and she just emits this guttural cry. It is oh, it's so uncomfortable to even
Hmm.
talk about. Um, and they're like trying to find cocaine to bring them out of it, and they're like, that's also happening. And Lou like runs out to confront Dom on the dance floor. If you want to talk about this part.
Yeah. So I can't believe we talk about this part anyway.
It's weird.
So she goes out to the dance floor, and she starts confronting her, and she's like, she hit me, I'm pregnant. And they're like, no, you're like, you didn't drink, you're the one that spiked us. Like the we were talking about it earlier, how it was what do you call it, the mob mentality,
Yeah.
where basically one person says it and everybody else is like, that's got to be it, that's the scapegoat pretty much.
Yep.
And so she's standing there trying to defend herself, saying, it wasn't me, I didn't do this, I'm pregnant, that's why I didn't drink. And they all start basically telling her to off herself, basically. And she like she falls back on the stairs, and she has this knife. She starts cutting into her arm,
Yeah.
and then
She cuts her arm and her face.
yeah, she cuts her arm and her face on like both sides, and then she starts punching herself in the stomach.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
and
Yep.
it is so hard to watch that with the like the connotation, the context of, you know, what's going on there. It is awful.
Yeah, uh, it's rough. And Selva's coming down the hallway, and she hears screams, and she finds the mother of the child, Emmanuel, and she lost the fucking key to
Yep.
the room that she locked her son in. And her son is screaming for help because he's hallucinating. This like 6, 7-year-old kid is on this drug, and he's screaming, and she's like looking for this key. She's like, "Find the fucking key!" And they she there's this guy that's kind of hitting on Selva throughout the movie named David, and he's like a player guy, like he fucks any
Yeah.
moves, and he was trying to get with that dude's sister, the one who kicked a guy out into the snow for
Yeah.
that, and she sees that her brother and this group of guys just beating David, and they're like, "Yeah, you're a perv," and all this stuff, and they're just beating ass. And then the school that they're in, I should mention that they're in like a school, like a gym area that I don't know if they rented it out. I don't know how it works.
It's supposed to just
Um,
be like a dance school. That's all it states, but we don't know exactly.
is it a dance school? Okay.
Yeah.
Um, the power cuts out completely,
Yep.
and somebody like is joking around the crowd like, "Oh, Tito must have electrocuted himself." And you're like, "Oh my god, this red
Right. They
lighting."
say it so nonchalantly in the film. They're just like, "Oh, Tito's fried." Like,
Yep, Tito's
bro.
fried. Yeah. And these red lights are on. And I should mention, over the course of the movie, the music, the beats per minute gets faster, 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 faster. So there's this girl named Ivana, and her girlfriend kind of have a falling out. And she takes Selva, and she's like taking her through this hallway, and they see this girl named Eva in a shower, and she's scrubbing her body viciously because she has blood on her from where Lou cut herself. And they, uh, they're both under a hallucinogenic drug. So Ivana and Selva start going at it, and David kind of like stumbles in, and Selva kicks him out. She's like, "Fuck out of here!" And there's this gay guy. He's a lot younger than a lot of the other crew, and he's like, he was trying to get with David. David's like, "I'm straight." So then he tries to go in there, and DJ Daddy, that's his name,
Yep.
DJ Daddy, he's just like, "Get the fuck out of here." So he's just completely just alone. He walks by the room, and trigger warning for incest. He stumbles upon Gazelle and her brother Taylor start to go at it. And the sister's trying to get away.
Yeah.
And she stumbles into the hallway, and just you get this other shot back on the dance floor, and like there's just people everywhere, just like around. And Keegan, you talked about something I kind of want you to talk about here
Yeah.
because I thought it was very insightful when you're talking about the location.
Yeah. So, the whole movie we've been watching, and it kind of tricks you, like the way that they move the camera and everything, that it's all one long take through the entire thing, which is very, very, what do you call it? Very unique cinematography. Having the camera like just follow people through the film. But the entire time, like as the movie's been going on, we get introduced to all the locations, so we know where the restrooms are at, where the bedrooms are, where the hallway that leads into like the front door to like the dance floor and everything. We've been introduced to all of it, and we get to the point where we end up back on the dance floor again, but so much of the camera action is focused around the floor, and it's just moving around various locations of the floor, so you don't really know where you are anymore. Like we've been able to, the entire time we've been able to know where we were because we could see the surrounding area, we could see the walls, we could see everything. When you're just being kind of moved around the floor, you're lost like everybody else in the film.
Yeah, it's really disarming. And people are just chanting, having sex, assaulting each other, and the brother catches up to his sister, and he's like, "Oh, I love you, and only you can make me happy." And she's like crying, and then she starts fucking having a seizure, and it's just David's getting attacked by another dancer, and he's like slamming his head into the floor, and it's all this crazy shit's happening. Selva is having sex with uh, that girl. It just keeps cutting around, cutting around. The music's faster, 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 faster. You just see these people like getting beaten. It is just it is insane, and that is a true form of horror. Like not being able to control your actions, not being able to control your mind. Like
Hmm.
none of them have taken acid before. None of them had planned on taking acid that night. They were forced to. They were forced to take LSD against their will,
Yeah.
and it is terrible. So we cut. Finally, you get a chance to breathe. Um, the police come in. They find almost all the dancers. They're either like completely knocked out or they're dead. And
Or
we see this,
they're just barely awake, just on the floor, probably in pain.
and yes, and we see Ivana's girlfriend who she had issues with before she slept with Selva, Psyche, and she's just dancing alone by herself. And Dom is just alone, just sobbing. Omar is fucking outside, frozen to death. Um, and we see Tito, and we're not sure if Tito's dead or not. And I told you during the movie that I was pretty sure he wasn't,
Yeah.
but I'm seeing a lot of like when I was doing research for Climax, I'm seeing a lot of conflicted things whether Tito's dead or not. It
Right.
doesn't seem like anybody knows because
The
he's very pale.
Yeah, the thing that we can't really confirm though is, I mean, if we're to believe that he like electrocuted himself,
Mhm.
traditionally you would see some kind of like track mark of the electrocution, something along those lines. He's just on the floor next to the electrical box, and there's no confirmation. I think that's one of the things, like we were talking about, how it's up to interpretation.
Yeah. And then we see his mom, whether he's alive or not, she killed herself.
Yep, outside the
Um,
door.
she couldn't get in, and she just decided to kill herself. And we see Gazelle. She wakes up next to her brother, and her brother literally is like, "Don't say anything to Dad." Like, oh my god. Um, completely forgot to mention the girl that was on fire. There was
Oh
a girl
yeah,
whose head was on fire, and we see her the next morning, and
yeah.
she's like splashing water on her burned
Yeah,
scalp.
because when the part when everybody's looking for cocaine, they're like, "Go talk to her. She probably still has some." And then everybody's talking to her, and she's like, "No, I'm all out. Don't have any." And then at some point, somebody catches her doing some, and she's like, "I knew you had some." And she pushes her, and there's this lit burner right behind her, and her hair just goes up.
Yep. So then we see Lou, which is the first shot of the movie is Lou in the snow,
Yep.
and she's crawling. She completely lost her mind after she killed her baby,
Yeah.
and she's just, like, out in the snow, like, making snow angels, like, laughing. She's just gone completely just absolutely insane,
Hmm.
and, we get this flashback, um, psych, and we see in her bag she has a bunch of books on LSD and things like that, and she takes a liquid drop of LSD in her eye, and then fade to the well, no, it just fades to black because the
Yeah.
credits are in the middle of the film,
Yep.
yeah. Yeah, it just fades to black. Um, it is it is a very, very it's a crazy, crazy film. Um, they shot it in 15 days.
That's
Um,
wild.
they choreographed everything for the dance. Everything was done in 15. Um, they asked Noé once. He wanted to have a different approach to how he depicted drugs in his film. He said, "I don't want to do any visual or sound effects to reproduce the feeling you are having when you're on drugs. I thought it would be funny to do it the other way, like shoot almost documentary style with long cuts, seeing how the effects of drugs and alcohol are experienced, how it's seen from the outside, like
Yeah.
how it all shows and not how it feels." So it's like you're really just watching these people do it. You don't feel like it's not like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas where the camera's kind of distorted,
Yeah.
the sound.
It's the best way I can describe it is like, if you've ever been around a friend that's been drinking and you're not drinking, like it's kind of like that.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the absolute best way to describe it.
It's just,
What
maybe somebody's doing drugs.
yeah. So how do you, what are your thoughts on Climax, Keegan?
It's a very interesting film, from the standpoint of like cinematography is a big one because I don't know if I've ever talked to you about it, but whenever I see a film or like a show or anything that does a really like it follows this long cut take without going away from it, and it's all just done in one long sequence. Those are some of my favorite things to watch. And this movie basically only cuts away in the beginning half when we're doing all the interviews and the dialogue between the characters. As soon as the movie opens up and it just starts following the this bad trip for everybody, it's a completely different film.
Yeah. No, I completely agree.
Yeah.
Um,
And then the whole use of like drugs and nobody really being in control, that kind of thing. Um, this is it's a little bit off topic, but it's also something I do want to talk about. So there's some mild spoilers for BoJack Horseman.
okay.
There's an episode where it's very psychedelic, like he's been taking I think it's like sleeping pills or something. He's not himself, and like there after when I finished that episode, I was physically sick to my stomach, and this was the first time that a movie's ever replicated that feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. It's you really see like an outside perspective of that whole thing that's going on. It is absolutely insane. And I love the scene at the beginning with the interviews, and you have the VHS tapes of a lot of the horror movies that inspired it. And like there's stuff there for like Taxi Driver and all these VHS tapes. And Gaspar Noé, when he originally made it, he actually was planning on doing a documentary about choreographed dance. And he got the idea for Climax while he was like deciding what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
Do you want me? I okay. Don't hate me. Well, there's two things you might hate me for.
What?
There's two things you might hate me for. One
Okay.
thing I didn't tell you when we watched it, and I'm gonna tell you now. It's loosely based on a true story.
I think I remember seeing that in the opening credits.
Yeah, it's yeah, it there wasn't anything that crazy that happened. There was some like they're acting weird
Yeah.
and doing like I'm sure there was some of the things that happened in film, but nothing like uber like insane like in the
Yeah.
movie, but it is based on something like that happened.
This is the part where I edited out part of the podcast because Mike had to pee.
Yeah, Climax. It is in French. I don't think we really mentioned that. We did
Yeah.
say it was French, but the film is in French. The soundtrack is really good. Has songs by Daft Punk, Aphex Twin, Giorgio Moroder, Soft Cell, Cerrone, Chris Carter. There's a lot of others too. Daft Punk is one of the big ones,
Yeah.
uh, and they've worked with Noe a lot. Um, I didn't know this until I was reading up for the podcast, but apparently there are 100 VHS copies of the film out there somewhere.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I'd like to get one, but it's probably gonna be like $3,000.
Yeah.
Um,
I want the film in a tin.
um, no steelbook.
No, like the actual film reel. I want them to
Oh, you
re-record the
you
movie
film
on
reel,
film, put it in a tin, give it to me.
dude. Um, so the reviews for Climax are insanely mixed. I mean, insanely mixed.
Yeah.
It, ooh, I think out of the A24 ones, this one's the most divisive. It was very divisive for critics as well. Um, Oh, they're both sitting at like a 60, between a 66 and a 69 for critic and audience on Rotten
Hmm.
Tomato. I remember one very famous review from the Arizona Republic, and I can't remember what it was. He gave it like a 1 out of 5.
Yeah.
He was like a big like I don't know a critic or whatever, but it is a hard movie to watch, but I think it does have a lot of value.
I think a big thing with a lot of the A24 movies, and how they're divisive, I think a big part of it is that a lot of A24 films, like your general populace of people that are like, I like movies. It's not for them. It's for your lovers of pure cinema.
Or your huge horror buffs in terms of their horror films.
Yeah.
So now we are moving on to Bodies, Bodies, Bodies,
And from now
which
on, just in case we had to bring it up, we'll be referring to it as Triple B.
triple B, B times 3.
Yeah, that
Uh,
too.
for audio listeners, if you are hearing this portion, YouTube listeners as well, we are now past climax. So your bodies, bodies, bodies. Man, I have so much to say about this movie. Out of all of the ones we watched, I'm gonna have us rank them at the end, of course. But I think this is my favorite of the four.
Okay.
Um, I absolutely adore this film. I have seen it. It came out, to give you guys context if you haven't heard of it. We will be getting into the plot. It came out in August of 2022, and I saw it 3 times in the theater, and I saw it another 5 times after that. I've seen this 8 times. It's barely been out a year. It is so much fun. I love rewatching it, and it's one of those movies, it has a big twist, but it doesn't matter. The twist is not the movie.
Yeah.
The twist does not define the movie. It's not something like The Sixth Sense where after you know the twist, it just doesn't work on rewatches. This absolutely works. If anything, I think it's
I think
funnier
yeah,
every
I think
time.
it works as a better movie when you have the plot to twist context.
Yeah, when you know everything and you're not, like, on the edge of your seat, like, wanting to find out what's going on.
Yeah. When we get to that part, I will let you tell everybody about my reaction to the plot twist.
Okay.
um, but let's just go ahead. We'll get into the movie here.
Yeah, let's get into this thing. So, this was a film, created, by, Helena Regine. This is, like, her first big thing, that she's done. I mean, she worked on some, like, short stuff, she did some TV, she actually did a lot of theater. This was, like, her first big movie. Um, like, her I don't know how to explain it. She A24, it's the A24 thing. They
Yeah.
give, a creator that has an idea for something. I'm gonna tell you something that's wild.
Okay.
The director, Regine, is 47.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and I know it's like, "Ooh, that's why are you talking about that?" The dialogue in this film, well, I guess she just directed it, but the girl who wrote the dialogue, Sarah DeLappe, she's a playwright. This is the first film she wrote. She's 33.
Yeah. And the so for context, a lot of the dialogue in the film, um, it's very based around like
Gen
stuff.
Z.
Yeah, Gen Z, like how people that you'll see on like all your TikTok videos, how they talk. It's very it's largely based around that.
Yeah, and I think it's the only film that does something like that and it doesn't come across as cringy.
Yeah, but
I
it
think it
actually
works
kind of
really well.
works.
Yeah, I think it works really well here. So it's about this group of people, and they're all very, very wealthy, with the exception of Sophie. And I don't think Greg is that well off, but much better well off. I mean, he is a vet assistant, which
Yeah,
we'll talk about. Basically, they're wealthy because they are having a hurricane party. Oh, Sloppy Butcher just resubbed.
yeah. Just
Welcome
saw
in,
that.
Sloppy Butcher.
I was gonna let you
Hope
finish your sentence and then and then mention it.
welcome in. I hope you enjoy the podcast.
Thank you for the sub.
So, they're wealthy. They're having a literal hurricane party. Like, everybody else is taking shelter, from the hurricane. They're like, "Yeah, let's have a party." And there's a point later in the movie where the news is on, they're talking about the hurricane, and one of the girls has the audacity to say, "Turn that off, it's bumming me out." It's like, "Dude, are you kidding me?" So, they're all having this hurricane party at Pete Davidson's, his family's, like, mansion that he has. His name is David. There is his girlfriend Emma, who is like this actress, kind of. She was in Had a Gabler, as they mentioned like 100 times. Like she's like fake crying in the movie. And they're like, "Oh, she's just fake crying. She was in Had a Gabler." I'm sorry, I'm gonna ramble throughout this entire thing. I love this movie. You'll never find me more excited about a movie on here. Then you have, Sophie, who is, our main girl that we follow, B. That is her girlfriend. B is just this kind of working class woman. She's from Eastern Europe, probably the Ukraine area, I'm gonna guess.
Yeah.
Um, she is not wealthy. She is not well off. She is not by any means. She's kind of like our tie back to reality.
Yeah.
Uh,
This is like, oh, this is I can identify with this because, I'm not wealthy.
yeah. Jordan says in the chat, so much info and knowledge. I love the pod. Thanks, man. We really appreciate that. Film is what I breathe. Um, you have Alice, who is my favorite character in the movie. Really divisive. Played by Rachel Sennett. And she has a boyfriend with her, who is my second favorite character. Just a down to earth guy named Greg. And if you want to picture Greg in your head, because we're going to talk about him a little bit. Greg is the chat image. He literally is just the chat image. And then there's Jordan, who is Sophie's ex-girlfriend, who is there. Um, they do talk briefly, like as soon as they get there, about Max, who was another guy that was there, and they just kind of like he left.
Yeah.
Something. So they get this pool scene, and we immediately get to see that there's some tension between Pete Davidson's character and Sophie, the girl who brought Pete to the party, and they're like, "Oh, we didn't know that you were coming."
Yeah, I texted in
And
the group chat. No, you didn't.
yeah, you didn't text in the group chat. So there's a little bit of some shit happening there. They all go inside when the rain starts. Pete Davidson is being Pete Davidson. The rain starting, the lightning striking. He's like, "Show me what you got, motherfucker!" And he's got like this sword that he's holding up, or what did you say it was called?
It's
Like the
a kukri.
kukri.
It's a form
I'll
of
try to
machete.
remember that. I'll try to remember that. I always saw it as a sword. I'm not a big. So anyway, they go inside when it starts to rain. We kind of get a little bit of the relationship between these characters and who they are together. Um, and I, David kind of walks in on B and Sophie. They're making out, and he's just like, "Hello," and she's like, "Can you knock?" He's like, "It's my fucking house." So he asks Sophie if she could talk to him, and he's like, "Oh, she's like, what do you think of my new girlfriend, B?" And he's like, "Oh, she's kind of cute in like a school shooter kind of way." Like, she like brought him zucchini bread, and like to us, that's like such a nice thing. Nobody brings gifts anymore.
Yeah.
And these people are so rich, they see it as like a fucking freak thing to bring something like zucchini bread. He's like, "Oh, I got you zucchini bread," like doing an impression of her. You're like, damn, these people are really spoiled. They're assholes. So they're sitting there talking, and Pete Davidson is like, he's got like a black eye, and he's talking about like him and Max got into a thing, and he, he- he's like, he says one of my favorite lines in the movie. And Keegan, I know you like the line. If you wanna
Yeah.
give
So
context for it.
he's sitting there and he's like, I like to give up the vibe that I fuck. Like I look like I fuck.
And that's like the vibe that I
Yeah.
like to put out there.
Yeah.
And he's like comparing himself to Greg. It's clear that he's very jealous of Greg.
Yeah.
And he's like, like he's hot, but he's not like that hot. Like, your mom, not your mom, but like moms in general, like to see him coming out of a Starbucks and like getting a glance at him. And Sophie kind of drops a ball on him, and she's like, "Have you talked to my parents?" He's like, "What the fuck are you doing here, Sophie? Like, what is this?" She's like, I missed you," trying to change the subject because it's something he does not want to talk about. And he's like, "Oh, that's a lie. Nobody's ever missed me." And so they all go downstairs, and they're like, B is in the kitchen. She's eating this cake. And they tell her like she's digging into this thing. I think what the movie's trying to show is that she has an eating disorder. Because, and I know it's like it seems like a jump because it's your first time seeing it, but later in the movie when she runs out to the car, she immediately like flings open the bag of cheese, like cheese doodles or whatever, and just starts like
Yeah.
scarfing them. Like it seems like she eats when she's really nervous. And she's like eating this cake, just absolutely eating it. And Rachel Sennett's character, Alice, she's just like, You know there's weed in that, right? So good. And then you get, I should mention that Greg is played by the amazing Lee Pace, who is 45 years old, and they're all, like, in their early 20s, and he's just 45, and he's just there, and they're, like, making a TikTok, and they have their phones set up, and he, like, comes up, he's like, "Oh, you guys doing a TikTok? I've always wanted to do one of these," and, like, he's dancing with them, it's it's so stupid.
Yep.
So then they're all, like, drinking and doing drugs, they're dancing, Pete Davidson's dancing with his girlfriend, he, like, bites her lip really hard, and she, like, moves away from him, and he's talking to Sophie, and she's like, "What happened?" He's like, "I coked out, not better." What? Um, so they're all dancing and, uh, Sophie is like she just switches off the music, they're all, like, dancing, and she's like, "Who wants to play bodies, bodies, bodies?" And, you hear it, like, they're like, some of the girls are cheering, and you hear Pete Davidson go, "Aw, fuck." Um, so if you wanna describe, like, the early part of the game, you can.
Yeah.
And then we'll start.
Amogus. No.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, it's think about Among Us pretty much, but it's the
A24 Among Us.
yeah. So they all they write an X on a piece of paper and then they like, distribute it out. You grab the paper, and if you have the X, you're the killer.
Yeah.
So then after that it's
Werewolf.
huh?
Really similar to the game Werewolf, if anybody played that when they were younger.
Okay. I did not play Werewolf. I didn't even know what that is.
Oh,
So
okay.
um but after that it's pretty much lights go out, killer has to try and find somebody and like take him out. And then if anybody finds the body, they have to shout bodies, 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 turn the lights on, and try and figure out who the killer is.
Yep. Do you wanna talk about, like, well, I'll do this part, and then you can talk about how the game starts. For audio listeners, that's in quotations because
Yeah.
there's an interesting thing that they do at the start of the game, and I'm not sure what it contributes to the game.
Yeah.
So there's this, like, kinda argument, and, Emma's like she's upset already. She's like, somebody always ends up crying," and they're like, "You always end up crying." She's like, I it's not my fault, I can access my emotions easily," and they're like, "Oh, yeah, you were an Ada Gabler," and it's there it is again. Um, and then they all kinda, like Pete Davis is like, "That's why the game's fun, that people get upset. That's what makes the game fun." So they all sit down, and they're getting ready to start.
What's up?
If you I wanted you to talk about the
Oh,
drinking
okay.
game. If you,
Sorry.
like, proceed it, you're good.
So they all sit in a circle and they take a shot, and then they're supposed to slap the person to their right.
Yeah.
Who's it start with?
I think it starts with Jordan smacks or
Yeah.
no, it's
What,
yeah, or is it Rachel Sennett smacks Jordan, and then Jordan smacks Sophie, like or not Sophie, B really hard,
yeah.
and then B goes to hit, um, David, uh, Pete David's character,
Yeah. And
and
she turns
but
and she just does this little little tap.
yeah.
And then he's like, "Come on, like actually hit me." She pulls up a little bit more, hits him, and he's like, "I mean, like this." Turns over to Greg and just punches him in the jaw.
Oh, absolutely decks him, like, rocks his shit decks him,
Yeah.
and they're like, "Oh my god, you're such," the girls are like, "You're such an asshole," and, he's just, like, laughing it off or whatever, and Greg's just like, "'Kay." Greg's, like, got a lot of patience.
Yeah.
He he, um, he has a lot of patience. So lights go out, after that, they, like, hit the last couple girls hit each other. Lights go out, they're all going around, and this is really interesting. Most of the film is in the dark. The only lighting that they actually just use cell phone
Yeah. So
for
they
a
have like
majority of the
the
lighting.
screen is on and it's completely white, and then the back flashlight is on.
Yeah. And that's something that's never really been done like that. They would always like the films have been shot in the dark, of course, but they've always had like different ways to light it up so you see the characters. In this, the only way you see them is through their lights. And Rachel Sennett Alice has like these glow rings around her neck.
Yep. I think
Um,
a really cool thing about it too is like having the phone screen light on and the back one on. you can still see the character's face and what like they're in their environment.
Yeah. So they're all kind of like going around their own thing, and we get to see B's perspective, and it's really interesting. Just it's a weird game. So, excuse me. We um we finally hear bodies, bodies, bodies. So, body's been found, and it's Greg. Greg's laying there, and uh, they're all like, "Oh no!" And Alice is like doing this whole like she's dialing it up. She's like, "Greg!" Like do this dramatic thing, and like after a couple minutes, they're like arguing back and forth, like Among Us, who it is,
Yep.
and B's like, "He's not moving," and like you get this like, "Oh my god," because it's a horror movie going in,
Yeah,
kind of. Or
they're kind of like
uh,
this is the first kill.
yeah, they're like, "Oh my god," and he's like not moving. They're shaking him, and then Pete Davidson goes, "This always works." Takes a bottle of beer, taps his balls, and he goes, "Whoa!" He just like sits up. It's so funny. He's like, "Yep, that always works." And they're like arguing back and forth more, and Greg goes, "The best offense is a good defense." And Pete Davidson starts fucking with him, and he's like, "Well, what do you mean by that,
What does
Greg?"
that even mean?
And he's like, that's what it means. A good offense is a good defense." He's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, I heard you. But like, what does that mean to you, Greg? Like,
Yeah,
what do
honestly,
you mean by
just thinking about it
that?"
right now, I'm cracking up.
It's really good. And Lee Pace is just like, I don't know. And they're all like, "Oh my god, you're such a dick." And Greg's like, "Oh, you're fucking with me." And David's like, "I'm not fucking with Greg." Like, and he's just like, he's really pissed. He gets up and kind of like eyes him down, and he's just like, "I'm gonna go to bed. You kids have fun." He's just pissed, and he doesn't want to like get involved in conflict, which again is like a really interesting thing about Greg. He's just like a peaceful dude.
Yeah,
Um, so David and Emma then get into it like a huge argument, and it escalates really fast. Like, and Alice does not help. Alice is like, "Oh my god, is that why you guys never have sex?" And Pete Davidson's like, "You you talk about us like that?" And she's like, "No," and Alice's like, "Yes." And, it's just this huge argument, and then they all start, he's like she says, "You're always gaslighting me." This is the reference Trent made earlier in
yep.
the podcast. And he's like, "Shut the fuck up, gaslight, it's a fucking made up word." And it's so funny, and he's like, What's next? You're gonna call me like a foot soldier for the white supremacy or something like that?" He's like, "All gaslighting means is, like, you use Twitter." And they all start voting him out. Emma's like fake crying, and David gets pissed. He like punches this vase, and he's like, "Fuck this game." We got a couple of chats. Um, Trent says Greg is daddy as fuck. Sloppy Butcher Jordan says correction, I'm daddy as fuck. And then Trent says, "Congrats, you have a Twitter account."
Which is another
Um,
quote from the movie.
yes, yes. So the storm's getting worse outside, and the power goes out, and they're like, "Fuck." They think David turned it off,
Yeah,
and they're
because
all like
he was
looking
upset because he got voted out of the game.
and they look outside one of the sliding glass doors, and there's David, and his throat is cut. And there's the kukri nearby, completely just covered in blood. And they're like freaking the fuck out. And they're like, "What do we do? What do we do?" Like, they're, "Don't disturb the body. It's evidence." Like, they have no idea what to do. They're like, none of them have reception. They all run to get to Sophie's car because they all only had one other vehicle, and Max took it. So they all get in Sophie's car, the battery's dead. When B was doing her makeup before she came in, she left the thing flipped down so the light was on. What do you call that in the car?
Uh, like the mirror light,
Yeah.
like the one that drops down from the sun visor.
Yeah, yeah. And it killed the car battery.
Yeah,
Sort of like, what do we do? And the music is so good. It's like this doo-doo-doo. And they all go back inside. They're like, "What do we do?" And they discover Greg has this like, what do you call it, a go bag?
yeah. So he has
And
a
he
go bag, and they're like, Why does he have all the survival equipment, and why is the house circled on a map?
Yeah, like, the dude doesn't use Google Maps. Like, he just has and it's so foreign to them. They're like, "Why does he have a map, and why is the house circled up? Like, he's got a knife in here." So they're like, "What do we do?" And Emma, like, freaks out. She goes and she's laying in bed. She's just, like, sobbing, and they, like, go up to find her, and they're like, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "Yeah." And one of the girls takes a pill, and Emma's like, "What's that?" She goes, "Xanax." She's like, "You want one?" "Yeah, give me one." And, they're like, "Alright, we need to find Greg." And, like, Alice is like, "It's not Greg." And they're like, "How can you be so sure? How long have you even known him, Alice?" And he's like, "A while, okay? Like, a really long time." And she's like, "Well, how long is that?" "I don't know." What did she say, like, 3
she's
weeks?
she's like, I don't know, like 2 weeks.
"Yeah, it's 2 weeks." And they're like, "Jesus Christ, Alice." And she's like, "What?" And he's like, "Do you even know his middle name?" She's like, "You don't ask what your middle name is, okay? For, like, a really long time." So they go and they find Greg, and Greg has this, like, mask on. It makes him look really ominous, but it's like what do they say he has seasonal depression?
Something like that. And it's supposed to be like it's supposed to be like the safe UV light that you just like kind of so it
Yeah.
absorbs into your skin, that kind of thing.
Y yeah, it's like seasonal depression is what he has, and they go down there and they're like, "G David's dead," and he thinks they're fucking with him,
He's like, is
and
this part of werewolf?
"Yeah, you guys still playing werewolf?" And he's like he doesn't know that like, David's actually dead, so he's, like, fucking with the girls, and he's just like, "Ooh," and he's, like, moving around and
Yeah,
yelling, and they're, like, scared to death of him,
yeah.
and they're like, What do we do?" And they're like, it's, not it's Jordan, and she's just like, "Why do you have a go bag, fucking Greg?" He's like, "The hurricane."
Earth
Like,
game,
"Well,
just in case we gotta get out of here.
yeah, he's like, it's emergency gear." And, there's this, like, discussion that happened, like, earlier on that Greg was, like, a veteran. We'll get into that. And, Greg's just like, "Okay." He starts to feel like something really is wrong. And they, like, all have these weapons on him, these knives and things. He's like, "Alright, put the weapon down." And he, like, finally starts to get, like, agitated. He's like, "Put it down on the ground now!" And he has a weapon too. And you're like, "You do it first." And he's like, "Okay, that seems fair." So one of the girls jumps on him and they're like struggling and he like throws her off. He's like, "Oh my god, are you okay?" And then another one's charging at him and he's like trying to get him off. And then B hits him in the back of the head with a kettlebell.
Yep.
And he just drops and there's blood coming out the back of his head. And then
It starts out like because he's standing there, and you're like, "What happened?" And then you just see the blood start coming off of his forehead.
yep, and he drops and it's revealed that B is standing behind him. And he just hits the ground. He's oh, and she hits him again and he drops. And they're all like crying and she's like, "You just killed David." And B just like vomits on her. Or no, that's later. She like pukes on herself. She's just like she can't even believe what she did.
Yeah.
So they all leave and Alice is super upset and they're kind of starting to doubt that Greg was the killer. And Emma's like, "What about Mac? Like he told me that he loved me, you know. Maybe he came back to kill David." Um and they're like they're not sure what to do. B kind of disappeared. This is when she does vomit on herself. Like
Yeah.
she's just doesn't even know what to do. She like did it to protect her girlfriend. She's a very wholesome character, B is, and they're not sure what to do and all this shit's kind of happening. Like we get to see like different glimpses of all the characters like trying to figure things out, and they're all fighting. And Sophie, the main girl, is sober now, but she was a drug addict. She relapses.
Yep.
She gets into the drugs that they have, and
Starts
then she's
drinking
like,
some whiskey or something like that.
"Yeah, watch it down." Yep, and she's walking down the hallway, and her and Emma got into this big fight, and Emma kisses her like afterward, and Sophie's like, What are you doing?" And Emma's like, "Isn't that what you wanted?" And she's like, "Yeah, that's exactly what I was in the mood for. Thank you very much." Like, what the fuck? And we see Emma walk away, and then Alice is downstairs and she starts yelling. Emma's body is at the bottom of the stairs. She's got a head wound. And they're like, "Oh my god." They're like, "We're being picked off one by one." I'm like, "What do we do?" And they're like, "What did she fall?" And Alice like, "No, she was pushed. She was pushed. I told you Greg wasn't the killer." And they're like freaking out. They're like, "Who's the killer in the game?" And they're like, "It doesn't matter." And then Jordan and Alice immediately blame B. They're like, because Jordan's like a psychopath.
Yeah.
She like Googled her and like found out she lied about where she went to school and where she works. So they throw her out into the storm.
Yep.
And um she runs out to the car, she gets in, she's just like devouring these Cheetos, she's freaking out. She finds a pair of underwear in the back of the car that matches Jordan's bra that she had seen earlier, and she's like, so she looks through a window and she sees Jordan holding David's gun. She's like, I gotta get back in there. She crawls in through this pet door and she meets up with the group again, and they're like, what the fuck are you doing here? And she like explains why she lied to Sophie. Like, her mom's got borderline. Um, she didn't want to disappoint her. The reason she didn't have a job is because she didn't want to think that she was a bum and she was useless, and she really does love her. It's really sad.
Yeah.
And then they start this massive argument that is my absolute favorite part of the movie. They're all just shitting on each other, and it is the best use of like Gen Z dialogue I've ever heard in a movie. Like they're going back and forth, and they're like talking about Alice has this podcast. They're like, "You hate listen to her podcast," and Alice is like, "No, like what?" And Jordan's like, "No, no, I don't hate listen." And B's like, "Well, what's your podcast called?" And she's like, "It's called Hanging Out with Your Smartest and Funniest Friend." And Jordan just like audibly goes, and she's like, "Did you just groan?" And Jordan's like, "No." And she's like, "Yeah, it's this your smartest and funniest friend." And she just like rolls her eyes, and she's like, "Oh my god, you literally just rolled your eyes at me." And they keep arguing, and Alice turns on Jordan after she hears that about the podcast, and she just like goes right after her insecurity. She's just like, or no, I should say right before this. Sorry, I forgot a really important detail. Um,
You forgot about the part that
Jordan.
it takes a lot of work to make a podcast.
Oh, I was getting into that part. It was where Jordan tells B that her and Sophie hooked up before the party,
Yeah.
like a week or two ago, and she's like, check her text. And they're like, "You're unhinged, Jordan. Like, you're a true psychopath. I could never be with you. Like, who could be with a walking?" Or no, it's that's what Alice says, but she's just like, you're a narcissist. You're a psychopath. Like, you schedule everything in your phone, including sex." And and then right back to where we were before. Alice is super pissed. She's just like, you always wonder why like nobody likes me because I'm mean and I'm a bitch." And she's just like shitting on her so bad. And I've never heard this used as an insult before, but she's like, "Jordan, you're obsessed with your rags to riches story. Your parents are upper middle class." And they're like, and then Jordan's like, "No, they're not." And Alice like, "They teach at a university." And Jordan's like, "It's public." Like that makes so much of a difference. And Alice is like, "Oh my God, you're right. That is a big difference. Who could date a walking spreadsheet with a superiority complex?" And Jordan shoots her in the leg. She's like, "Did she just fucking shoot me?" And Jordan goes, "No." And they start fighting for the gun, and we hear a gunshot. Alice is shot in the throat. Um, they're like, "Oh my god." Sophie and Jordan are fighting, and B kind of like is trying to figure out what to do. And Sophie gets up and she's like, "I didn't," or sorry, Jordan gets up. She's like, "I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to." And Sophie's like, "Give me the gun, Jordan." And they're like backing up over these stairs, and like they're going up the steps like backwards. And Jordan's like, "Please, please stop coming closer." And they get into this altercation, and B comes out of nowhere and just shoves Jordan over the staircase, and she hits the ground, and she says one of the most Gen Z like final lines I've ever heard in my life. She says, "Check her texts."
And then
And she
just
just like,
pops off like 3 rounds.
yeah, into the ceiling. Um and like she asks their like B and Sophie are like together, and they're like, "Did you kill him?" "No." "Did you?" "No." And uh Sophie's like, "You killed Greg." And she's like, "Yeah, to protect you." And you're kind of confused as to like what's going on at this point, and like Sophie's like trying, or B is trying to believe Sophie, and she's like, "Did you sleep with Jordan?" And she knows herself that she did because of what she found in the car.
Yeah.
And Sophie says, "No, no, I would never." So B takes off and hides, and we cut to storm's over. She's like walking, and Sophie like comes up to her, and she's like crying, and she's like, I she says that I relapsed. I gave Emma some of my drugs, and she fell downstairs. So we get the reveal. She didn't. She wasn't pushed. She fell.
Yeah.
B puts a gun on her, and she's like, "Show me your text." And Sophie just throws her phone, and they start fighting over it. And they fall in the water at one point. It's a really cool shot. The water's real dirty because of the rainwater and everything. And they get out, and B grabs his phone, and they're like, "Whose phone is this?" And they realize it's David.
Yeah.
They take it over to David. They open one of his eyes, and they put it there, like you know how the
The
Apple like
face
has
the face
the
scan.
face recognition, yeah. And we see a TikTok that he was recording before he died with the song "Bored in the House" playing, and he's playing with the sword. Earlier in the movie, Lee Pace's character Greg does this really cool thing with a champagne bottle
Yeah,
where he,
he comes out and he
he
sabers it with the kukri. He, you
yeah,
know,
he just
you've
like
seen sabering. I'm sure of
yeah,
it.
yeah, he like takes the top off of it or whatever with the kukri.
Yeah.
And Davidson was trying to do that, and he failed, hit himself in the throat, slashed his own throat,
Yep.
revealing that there was no murderer after all. And I remember when we were watching it, Keegan was just like, "What did you say? Are you fucking serious?" Is that what he said?
I'm pretty sure just like you're fucking lying to me.
Yeah, that's what it was. You're fucking lying to me. And they're like, they just sit the phone down, just in utter disbelief. He killed himself. There was no killer during the
Yep.
entire movie. And then Max comes back, and Max is just like, "What happened?" And they don't even know what to say. And then you hear like the ding of like text messages, and B like shows them her phone. She's like, "I have reception," and then the credits roll. It is so good.
Yeah. Such a like I don't know, because it plays off and it's like, oh, this is a horror movie. And then, as you're going through, it's like this is a very comedic horror movie. Like it's similar to climax, so it's not traditional horror. It almost plays out more like the original Scream, but less intentional murder.
Yeah, yeah. It's all just complete. There are two or three. There are three murders that happen, but none of them have anything to do with the first.
Yeah, and
Um,
it's not, no, literally there's only one murder, and it's in self-defense.
yes. Um, it's just it's crazy, and they use the dialogue so well. Um, it got that one actually. I do believe got pretty good reviews on both sides.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it's less controversial, or not controversial. It's less divisive because it's a much more straightforward film.
uh, do you know who Amanda Stenberg is?
No.
She was the one that played um Sophie in the movie.
Okay.
She had a really funny thing that happened to her when she was making this. Well, when it was released.
Yeah.
Um, there was this critic, Lena Wilson from the New York Times. She tweeted this thing saying, the only thing that sets bodies apart is that it is a 95-minute advertisement for cleavage and Charlie XCX's latest single, which is Hot Girl, which plays at the end. And Stenberg like immediately replied and said, "Your review is great. Maybe if you gotten your eyes off my tits, you would have watched the movie." Which is great, great reply. And they ended up like she said she tweeted again, it's like, "It's amazing that you didn't talk at all about the movie and decided to talk about my boobs instead, and you think the movie is the problem." And then the reviewer deleted the review.
What's
It was
wild to me is that
great.
there really isn't like that much cleavage in the movie, if any, really.
No, 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 there really isn't. There's a little bit at the beginning, but they're in a pool. Like they're literally in a
Yeah.
pool.
Yeah, that's it.
Uh, yeah, this
It's
movie is
almost like she didn't actually watch the movie.
No, yeah, she made me watch the first 10 minutes. Um, and I think it was originally written to be a play. If memory serves me correct, which it would work as a play.
Yeah. I
It's
mean,
very simple
I
situation.
personally believe that anytime that you make a story that's, secluded to one location, like Reservoir Dogs and Bodies, 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 it can work as a play easily.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. It did fairly well. I think it pulled in like 14 mil. It did very, very well for itself.
Yeah.
Great movie.
It's even wilder that the A24 movies, like we've watched them and then we look at the directors and see that this is like their third or fourth movie.
Yeah, this one was like her first big one. For Robert Eggers for The Lighthouse, it was his second. Gaspar Noé was very experienced.
Yeah.
That was like Gaspar Noé's like deep into his career. Um, but a lot of the others, like it's really early on. Not a horror movie, but oh god, there's a movie A24 did called Mid-90s, and Jonah Hill directed it, and it was the only film Jonah Hill has ever directed, and they gave him the opportunity. Bo Burnham directed a movie for him. Um, yeah, A24 is a great studio.
Yeah.
We have a chat. I need a Bodies, Bodies, Bodies play. Yeah, I agree. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
That'd be a lot of fun. Um, so I guess there's just one film left.
Yeah. And it's
We
I think this is the most interesting, maybe. Um,
Yeah, it's up there. It's very it's hard to describe it very easily. We're gonna be talking about X, which is now the name for Twitter. Um,
yeah, so we're not talking about Twitter, we're talking about the movie X.
yes. Um, so this is a slasher, very akin to stuff from the 70s and 80s, like a love letter to that genre.
Yeah. Even
And
we were watching it and there were moments where like I was looking at like some of the camera work and I'm just like that's straight out of like a 90 or out of an 80s movie. Um,
yeah, it's so it's I guess I'll just basically Ty West, who is a filmmaker, has done a few movies before this. This is like his first really, really big hit. He just kind of decided to make a trilogy. Um, he filmed this and Pearl pretty much back to back, and Pearl is a prequel to this. And the sequel to this, Maxine, is in post production currently, which should be coming out early next year. And it's this one takes place in 1979. Um, it's about a group of adult film makers. They go to this farm in Texas to shoot a film, and some bad shit happens. The movie opens with these police officers. They're at the farm, presumably after the events of the movie take place, and there's bodies everywhere. They'll look at, and then it says 24 hours earlier. It's like, oh god, this all happens in 24 hours. So we see Maxine, and she's just like, I'm gonna be a fucking star. Like she's ready. She wants to, she wants to be she wants to be a star. She wants to like make her mark on the world. She wants people to remember her name.
yeah, she keeps
And
coming up she keeps repeating the same line which is I will not accept a life I don't deserve.
not accept a life I do not deserve. So we've got this guy named Wayne who's kind of holding everything together. There's Bobby Lynn, Jackson, played by Kid Cudi. And you got RJ and RJ's girlfriend Lorraine, who's played by Jenna Ortega. Early horror film for her. This came out the same year as Scream, so she made a pretty big mark on the horror world in 1 year, and she
Yep.
just kind of cemented herself as a permanent.
She
I,
started rolling with it.
yeah, she is yeah, she's real into horror now. I do believe like everything she's slated to do now is horror related.
Yeah. So yeah, because she did X and Scream 5 in the same year.
Yeah,
Scream
she's
6 and Wednesday. So those are all
and
the big ones I can think of off the top of my head.
she's in the Beetlejuice sequel as
Yep.
well, that is currently being filmed. Uh, yeah, she really like stepped into it like hard and fast, like into the horror genre. I know there's a couple other projects, I can't remember what they are, but she is currently working on another couple of projects.
Yep.
So they open on them, the characters are kind of getting to know them a little bit in this van. I love the side of the van. What is it? Is it plowing
Plowing
services or something?
service.
Yeah, which is really funny. And Keegan was like, plowing, it's Texas. And I was like, no, Keegan, is a very different. Um,
So
so they,
this is different.
yeah. So RJ, the cinematographer, he's like, I want to make an actual movie, like really similar to Burt Reynolds' character in Boogie Nights.
Yeah.
He's like, I want to make something that people can remember me by. I don't want to just make an adult movie. I want to make a movie. And they're like, okay, dude, you're making. He's like, it's gonna be a serious cinematic like piece of art. It's gonna be beautiful. It's not gonna just be lust. And Wayne's just like, uh huh. Oh, so they get to this farm that is owned by Howard and Pearl, and Wayne immediately goes to the door, like, "Hey, we rented this building," and Howard's got a gun on him instantly, and he's a little pissed. He's like, "Who are you? Like, are you from the state?" He's like, "No, mister. I'm here for your tool shed or your barn or whatever it is. Like, or it's a guest house, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's a guest
the
house."
guest house.
Yeah, he's like, "I'm here for the guest house." He's like, "Oh yeah, yeah, you did call." So he takes him out to the house, and they're all like sitting there, and Howard asks Wayne, he's like, "So did you serve?" And Wayne's like, "Huh, no, I'm flat-footed." And Kid Cudi's character, Jackson, he's sitting there, he's like, "I served 2 tours Vietnam," and he turns around and looks at him, he's like, "I've had enough farmers pointing guns at me, if you know what I mean." And he's like, "Once a Marine, always a Marine. Hoo-ah."
Yep.
And he turns around, it's so good. And Howard's just like, "I don't think I like you. Matter of fact, I don't think I like any of you." And he's just like, "Stay away from my wife." And he leaves, and they're just like, "Okay." And Maxine's like, "Why'd you let him talk to us like that?" And Wayne's just like, "Just let it go." And Maxine's like, "He doesn't," or no, it's Jenna Ortega's character. Sorry, it's Lorraine. She's like, "Do they know what we're doing here?" And Wayne's just like, "No, and we are not gonna tell them. We're gonna keep it that way." And they're like, "Okay." So they immediately like get into the film and the porn, which we don't really talk about that too in detail. They're just kind of doing their thing. Jackson and Bobby Lynn are the first ones to go up for it, and then we cut to Maxine, and she's kind of wandering around. She sees this large pond, and she's swimming in it. Really, really cool fucking shot. She's like swimming back after she's done. She's taking a complete like nude. What do they call that?
Skinny
Skinny dipping.
dipping.
Skinny dipping. Yeah. And she's like swimming back to the dock where she jumped in. This fucking alligator just like inching across the water, and she's just like maybe 5, 6 feet in front of it,
Yep.
and she's swimming, and the alligator's just going side right behind her, and you're, oh my god! And they do this awesome shot from really up high, like panning down on the lake, and you just see it following. Oh god! So eh, Maxine gets out, and she's like going to the guest house, like where they're at, and she looks over at the house and she sees Pearl, the farmer's wife, and she's standing outside. And she kind of like beckons her, like come inside. She's like, okay. So she goes in, and awesome fun fact, uh, Pearl is played by Mia Goth as well. She plays 2 characters in this film. She plays Maxine and Pearl. She's got like 100 pounds of makeup on, completely practical. Um, Changes her voice. It's really well done. And Pearl like gives her his glass of lemonade, and they're talking. She's like talking about how envious she is of youth. She's like, "You won't be young forever," and like Maxine's kind of wearing this like what like overalls?
Yeah, it's overalls, but it's not like the full pants. It just covers like short length.
Yeah, and she's not wearing anything under it, so like her skin's exposed, and Pearl just like caresses her, and she's like, What are you doing?" And Howard gets back, and Pearl's like, "Go." get out of here." And you're like, "Ooh, okay." So, Maxine gets back, she talks to Wayne, she's so fucking weird, and Wayne's just like, "You gotta go fuck, like, we're losing daylight." So they do another scene, with, uh with Maxine, where, Maxine and Jackson are together, and we see Pearl outside just kinda watching, and she goes back home, and she's, like, talking to her husband, and she's like, "Oh, please, please," like, she wants sex with him, and he's like, "I can't, Pearl, my heart'll give out." Um, so, there night, like, starts to fall, and they're all kinda sitting there, and, if you wanna talk about the, exchange in the living room between Lorraine, RJ, and them, you can.
Yeah. So they're all like sitting down having some sandwiches for dinner, and they start talking about how like Lorraine's kind of looking at the um the actors, and she's like, how can
Specifically
you
Jackson.
huh?
I
Huh?
said specifically Jackson.
Yeah, yeah. But she's like, how can you love somebody and then like sleep with somebody else? And they're like, it's just sex. And
It's just
uh
business.
just business, yeah. And going into the whole thing where they're just like, we just want to like love each other. Like it's they say, um, what is it? Love is like somebody you choose or something, and then the other's just pleasure, whatever. Basically along
Yeah.
those lines.
Yeah, love is a much deeper thing than just sex too.
Yeah, yeah. And they're going on about it.
Debate.
Yeah, they're having a little debate. And then Jackson goes ahead, picks up a guitar, then plays what's the name of the song?
Landslide,
Yeah.
yeah, and, Bobby Lynn is singing it, and, she finishes, and the conversation starts back up again.
Yep. And
Uh,
it's immediately the rain looks over and says, I want to do a scene in the movie.
and RJ is like, no, you won't." And she's just like, but I want to. It's just sex, like, I still love you, I wanna do it." And, you if you want, you could talk about the conversation. Wayne kinda, like, pulls RJ aside, it's like, "Listen."
She's gonna do it one way or the other. The way
Yeah.
I see it is um if you do it this way, maybe she'll she'll just take you along with her.
Yeah, and she won't just go for any guy,
Yeah.
and, RJ is just completely upset. Lorraine goes and films the scene with Jackson, um, and RJ, um, he kinda, like he's trying to leave, and, he goes up to the house to get into the van, and, Pearl's kinda standing in the driveway, if you wanna talk about,
Yeah. So he gets in the van, picks on the engine, starts driving, and Don't Fear the Reaper by Blue Oyster Cult is playing on the radio. And as
yes,
he
it is.
drives up to the gate, you see Pearl just standing there. She's illuminated by the headlights of the van. And he like slams the brakes. He goes, oh shit. Stops the van, puts it in park. And he gets out and he's like, hey, what's going on? Like, you good? Do you want to like go inside or whatever? And she's kind of just sitting there, and she starts trying to like put the moves on him. And
Yeah, she, like, starts rubbing herself against him and
yeah.
everything.
And he like she goes in for a kiss and he's like, why did you do that?
Like, "Let me go get your husband."
Yeah. So like he goes to back up, and then she just stabs him in the throat with a knife that she had in her left hand that we couldn't see. She kind of had it like hidden behind her back a little bit. Um and then he starts stumbling away, and he's like in front of the van, and he like falls to the ground with this knife just sticking out of his throat. And she walks over, and the music picks up. It just starts blaring as she's taking the knife and just stabbing different parts of his throat. His blood is splattering all over the headlights. You went from this yellow tint of the headlights to just coated red.
Yes.
Everything is now casted in red as she's just stabbing away at him.
Yeah, it's just the light from the headlight just cakes the entire scenery around them. It's just blood red. And, wait, how is Mike is
I was
talking in the
talking in the
pod
pod and in the
in the
chat
chat
watching.
watching. I'm scared he is in my house too. Maybe I am, Jordan. Maybe I am.
Maybe
Uh,
maybe he's in your walls.
Yeah, I might be. I might be in your walls, Jordan. You don't know. Uh, and it's very clear. I brought this up to Keegan. It seems like girls like orgasm while
Yeah,
she's killing him, which is really fucked up.
yeah.
And it's just Don't Fear the Reaper just blaring. It's one of my favorite kills in a horror movie. It's such a good scene.
I do just want to mention, as soon as we were introduced to RJ, I went, he's gonna die first. I wasn't
Yeah,
wrong.
yeah. So uh, nobody like really notices that he's gone, and Lorraine like asks Wayne. She's like, "I can't find him. I can't find him." And Wayne's just wearing these underwear. Looks like John Cena in the Suicide Squad. Just got
Yep.
his bulge pair of tighty whities. He's like, "I'll find her."
Yep.
And he's like walking into this barn. And he steps on a nail. He just
Oh, he
drops his.
fully
Oh,
like the
oh
nails sticking up. It's about that long. It goes
yeah.
all the way in.
Yeah, for audio listeners, it's about like a what 2 inch long nail.
Probably two and a half, maybe 3 inch.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, probably. Can you grab the gutters for me? And how I'd be grateful. Oh, he's talking about like helping out his house if I'm in his walls.
Hey,
Sure.
how about you get the rats out of the walls?
Yeah, I I definitely will attempt that. So Wayne's just kind of like on the ground. He's like, "Oh, that really fucking hurts." And he like gets up and he's like looking out this peephole in the barn, and Pearl just like steps right into frame in front of him and just shoves a pitchfork through the holes into his eyes, and he's dead. So Lorraine like goes up to the main house where Howard is, and Howard's like, "Come in," and he's like, "My wife is missing. She's not well." He asks her, she's like, "Can you go down to the cellar and get me my flashlight?" And she's just like, "Sure, mister." And she's just down there, and there is a naked dude hanging on a hook down there, like cock out, everything just hanging there dead. Jenna Ortega just lets out one of the most guttural screams I've ever heard. It is, oh, it is impressive how well she screams.
Oh
And
yeah, I think she's gonna redefine the term scream queen.
yeah, it's awesome. So she's stuck down there, and Howard goes to the guest house, and he meets up with Jackson, and Jackson is just it's Kid Cudi's just completely naked. He like opens the door, doesn't care, cock just straight hanging out in the cold wind. And the old man's just standing there. He's like, "I can't find my wife," and he's got like all Kid Cudi's wearing is like his dog tags around his neck. He's like, "Don't worry about it, old timer. I'll help you find her." So he goes, he puts on some pants. You also get a full shot of Kid Cudi's dick. Um,
It's more of a silhouette, but it's still there.
it's
You can
it's
make it
real.
out.
Um, so Jackson's like helping him, and he's looking around the lake, and Howard kind of like fake tosses like drops his flashlight in quotes like into the lake, and he tricks Jackson to kind of go in and get it. He's like kind of hoping that the alligator's going to get him, and alligator does not attack. It's a really good like you're like ready for the alligator to kill Jackson, and then it just does not happen. He's just fine, and he comes out of the water. He's like, you gotta be more careful, man." And he just fucking lets buckshot go into Jackson's chest. Mm,
Yeah,
Goes right back.
he looks him in the eyes and he goes, once a Marine, always Marine. Turns the shotgun around, puts it at his chest, and just blasts.
Yep. So now Jackson's dead, RJ's dead, Wayne's dead. We just have the three girls left. And we see Pearl going into the guest house, and she just takes off all of her clothes, and she's in bed with Maxine. She's like rubbing her. Maxine like wakes up screaming. Bobby Lynn gets up. She's like, "What the fuck is happening?" And meanwhile, Lorraine gets through the basement door, and Howard attacks, and he just like breaks her fingers with the butt of
Yeah.
his
So
shotgun.
she took a small little hand hatchet and like cut out one of the panels of the door,
Hmm.
and she's like reaching through trying to go for the bolt, and then you just see her hands just start getting smacked as she pulls away, and he's like, "Get back down in that cellar, if you know what's good for you," basically, and you can see like the bone, like compound fracture of her bone coming through her finger.
Yep. Yep. And Bobby Lynn, like, she gets dressed and she goes out to the lake. And that's the one thing I will say about this movie before I talk about the scene is in a lot of 80s, 70s, and 80s slashers, they make a lot of the main characters very unlikable, so that you don't really care if they get killed. All of the characters in it, like
Yeah, they're not
like
like bad people at all. Like
no,
you go and watch like any of the Friday the 13th movies, and all the counselors that end up getting killed were just assholes.
yeah. And Jackson like was willing to help Howard find his wife, and then getting into this scene, Bobby Lynn is like, "Oh, do you have dementia? Like my grandma has dementia. I'll help you." And Bobby Lynn's like trying to help her off this dock, and Pearl's like standing over the lake, and Pearl just fucking slaps her, and Bobby Lynn's just like, "Well, fuck you then, like whatever." And Pearl grabs her and throws her into the water, and there's an alligator waiting for her. And Pearl goes back to the house. She's like, "Oh, Howard, please fuck me." She's like, "Pearl, my heart." And they're like, "Please." And then you get this like fucking graphic sex scene between two elderly people. Well, it's not even one of them's elderly, one of them's Mia Goth and like a shit ton of makeup. And Maxine's like hiding under the bed and she's like crawling away. And Maxine goes downstairs and she finds the van that they were going to escape in, and the tires are slashed. Like, fuck. Um, she's not sure what to do now. She gets a pistol from the glove box that Wayne had, and there's a thing really early in the movie, like a callback to this, where Howard like tells Wayne his shotgun wasn't even loaded, and Wayne's like, "I do the same thing with the gun in my glove compartment,
Yep.
so we already know it's not loaded."
Yeah.
She gets Lorraine out of the basement. Lorraine just fucking is just, "Fuck you people, fuck all this porn shit, I'm done, you're all crazy." She starts taking off through the house, and as she's running, just like you're expecting like a chase or something like that, and she's running, just boom,
Yep.
blows her
She
head off.
gets out
Howard
of
is
the
right
front door
there.
and just immediately gets blasted and like falls back.
Yeah, it's so fast, just absolutely erases her.
Yeah, and then you hear him shout out, "Told you to stay in the basement."
Yeah, and she's just like Maxine's just like, "Oh my god," and they're moving her body in the house, and her corpse like kind of like moves a little bit, like it, I don't know, like a post death twitch kind of
Yeah.
thing. And Howard just like and just has a heart attack and just drops. And
Slides down the wall.
uh, Maxine grabs the keys to the truck and she's like, "Getting the fuck out of here." And she goes to shoot Pearl. Pistol's not loaded. Pearl like tries to shoot Maxine. It just doesn't work. It's she like fires it, and it's this like she's like a little frail old lady, so the kick of the shotgun just blasts her out the door. She's onto the porch. She
Yep.
breaks her hip. She's laying in pain. She's like, "Please help me." And she gets into the husband's truck. Um, Pearl just starts like throwing out all these insults, like calling her a whore and all this shit, and Maxine just reverses the truck right over her head, just killing Pearl. And then
Yeah.
we get back to that scene at the beginning where the police are at the house and they find the bodies and whatever. And we get this really cool reveal. Throughout the movie, there's like this TV host that's like talking about murder or like smut and
Yeah.
sin and all
Talk
this
about
shit.
how like sex is sin and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and we get the reveal that that's Maxine's dad. He's a fanatical like preacher, and they find RJ's camera and they go up to this main sheriff and they're like, "What do you think's on it, sheriff?" And he goes, "If I had to guess, one insanely fucked up horror pic." And it fades to black. It's
my
so good.
my favorite part though is the deputy. He's like, "What do you reckon happened, sheriff?" He's like, "How the hell should I know?"
Yeah, how the hell should I know? Exactly. Uh, it's just uh, sorry, I was just finding. Yeah, it's nuts. I love that movie so much. It's such a great love letter to old horror. I can't wait to see the sequel. And the sequel has confirmed that Bobby Cannavale, Giancarlo Esposito, and Kevin Bacon are going to be in it.
Yep. And we also know
That's
it's
awesome.
what, 6 years later? Because this one
Yeah,
takes place in 79 and Maxine's supposed to take place in 85.
yes, 85. Uh, so yeah, it's so good. I can't even like explain it enough. It is such a beautiful like love letter to that to that era of horror, and the music and it like just it puts you into it, and it's I can't get enough of it.
Yeah.
Like the soundtrack alone is just perfect.
I think the only thing that it doesn't quite do that like a lot of 80s movies is it wasn't very campy. And I think that's just because like more modern like not prosthetics, makeup and stuff.
I think the dialogue was a little campy in parts.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, there's some campy dialogue thrown in there. Mia Goth is insane in both roles. She does so good. She's another horror icon that's really like making her mark right now.
Yeah.
She is. I can't wait to see the sequel. The prequel is awesome too. Um, I can't believe Giancarlo Esposito, Kevin Bacon. It's gonna be good.
The best thing
It's
though is like we finished watching X and we only planned to do 4, and right after we finished X, Mike's like, we should have watched Pearl.
yeah. It would have been so good. We really should have.
Yeah, but
We should have like
we're already at 2 hours here, so
we could have pushed it for 2.5. We
that's
did
fair.
so.
That would have definitely
Uh,
broken our record for longest podcast.
yeah, it really would have. So now kind of like a wrap up. I guess m- how would you rank them, least favorite to most favorite?
It's a really tough call because I enjoyed all of them. Um, I don't know. So, oh my god, it's so tough to actually. You go ahead first. And I'll see if it helps me out.
Of course, you'd make me go first.
Now you don't know
Um,
either.
I would probably. God, they're so tough. It's so tough because they're all such great
They're all
monumentous.
great, and they're all different enough that they don't really like you can't really stack them against each other.
Yeah, and they're all very very different films. I would probably do Climax in fourth, and then The Lighthouse, X, and then Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. For I
Okay.
would. I mean, that's really tough, and they're all so close. Like, and it depends on the day for me too. Like Climax could be all the way at the top of all of those if the right mood is hitting me that day, and I'm wanting that kind of
Yeah. That's a big
thing.
thing too when it comes to like ranking these kind of movies is like some of them like you got to be in the right mood to watch. I mean, they're all fantastic, don't get me wrong, but there are some times when like if you're in the right mood, it's going to hit different, it's going to hit harder.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. It's ah man, they're all just so good and they're all so unique. We got The Lighthouse takes place in 1890. You got Bodies, 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 which takes place in 2022. You have X, which takes place in 1979, and Climax, which takes place in 96. They're all
97.
very different. No, it's 96.
That was 97.
It's 96. I said it earlier.
You said
What are you doing?
97 earlier. I'm convinced.
No, I just googled it. It's winter '96. I was right.
Hmm.
Hmm. Anyway, they all like take place in their own time periods, and they all have their own quirks and their things that make them different. And the most wild thing is they all came out in the span of 4 years, 2018 to 2022. Climax came out in 2018, Lighthouse in 2019, X in 2022, and Bodies, Bodies, Bodies in 2022 as well. And they're all just that doesn't even scratch the surface. And that's what I think what the big thing of this podcast needs to be is just kind of alerting people about A24, those who aren't aware of it, and just the
Yeah.
absolute sheer number of things that they're helping to get made.
Yeah. Like we need to mention just how many films have been coming out from A24 that have just been absolute bangers. And especially to talk about the movie of last year was Everything Everywhere All at Once,
Yep.
A24.
Yep. A24 won Best Picture. They won Best Picture. They've only been around a decade, and I believe they won Best Picture either 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, I think what works for them is that they like it's not just oh yeah another movie, go ahead and crank that out. No, it's they're looking for people that have visions that want to make something more than just a movie.
Yeah. Exactly. Almost everything that's been done for them. Even if you don't like it, it is still a piece of art that you could sit there and you can talk about it. They've done like everything from these kind of horror movies to comedies to adaptations of Macbeth.
Yeah.
Like it is absolutely wild the sheer number of things that they've been able to accomplish as a production.
Yeah, I think if you've learned anything from this podcast, besides that you should watch any four of these movies, is to go and check out any other A24 movie.
Yeah, even if you're not into horror movies, I know that's what we're doing for October, but they've got a lot of movies that aren't horror centered.
Yeah,
You could watch Bo Burnham's Eighth Grade, First Reformed. I mean, there is a lot
there's
of
movies for everybody.
exactly.
So
You have to do your ranking.
I do. So I'd probably put Climax in fourth as well. And like you said, it could easily move, depending on how I'm feeling that day. And then I'd probably do. It's so tough.
It
Oh
is.
my god.
It's really tough. It's
Um,
like the hardest ranking I've had to do for the podcast so far.
can I just say that they all tie for first?
No,
No.
you gotta
Yeah.
do it.
Hmm. I don't. It's so difficult. I'd probably do Bodies, Bodies, Bodies in third, but it's very close. And then I do Lighthouse and then X.
X above the lighthouse,
Yeah.
really?
It was
I
tough, but
X is a very special kind of
yeah.
movie.
I will
It,
say that Lighthouse and X, it's like right here. It could
yeah, like
easily
neck and neck.
shift.
Yeah, it's such a great film and the music and everything. I just want to give a shout out before we completely end. If you guys like these movies, if you end up checking them out, if you end up checking them out before you watch it and you want some more A24 horror, I have a few recommendations that I wrote down for you. If you are really into this type of horror, the newer generation of horror through A24, I recommend you Pearl, Men, which is a great film. Very political in its messages. It's literally called Men, but I promise you, it, it's not, uh, you know, um, hurtful to one side of the gender spectrum or the other. It is very realistic film. Uh, well, it's not realistic, but realistic in its depiction of that. Lamb, I recommend you Lamb. Lamb is really good. Uh, very weird. Midsummer, Hereditary, and Beau is Afraid. All are horror films by Ari Aster. Um, there was one other one that I really wanted to recommend to everybody. First Reformed was just a bonus shout out. Um, First Reformed is great. It's a very different kind of horror about this priest who's kind of like pulled into the world of climate control and what he should do. And if you loved Robert Eggers' The Lighthouse, go check out The Witch. It's great. It takes place in Salem. It's got Anya Taylor-Joy as the lead. Takes place in the 1630s. It's like a coming of age movie during this time
Yeah.
where the Salem witch trials were happening and things like that. And
Yeah, there's
it
also
kind of
a lot of work done by the actors to give authentic accents for the time period.
yes, yes, in both The Witch and in
The Lighthouse.
The Lighthouse. Yes, they're both very very good.
Yeah,
Um,
I that's actually one of my favorite things about both those films. I haven't actually gotten to see The Witch, but I've seen like clips and stuff from it. Is just how the dialogue is written and how it sounds more authentic and closer to what you would have heard in the time period.
yes, yes, it is very close, and he I haven't seen, what's the one he did that's Viking? Is it The Northman?
I'm not sure.
I think it's The Northman. He did a Norse mythology film, not through A24, that did very well for itself, not in the box office, but in terms of like critic reception, it was very good. And the Old Norse, I've seen clips. He
Yep.
does a really good job of incorporating that. I don't know if you knew this, but Robert Eggers is remaking Nosferatu.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and Willem Dafoe is gonna be in it, and I do believe Willem Dafoe is not playing Nosferatu. Willem Dafoe has actually played Nosferatu in a movie,
Yeah.
movie that came out in the early 2000s. But Bill Skarsgård,
Hmm.
who played Pennywise, is playing.
There's actually a really big thing. The more, like, the older I've gotten and the more I've seen of him, Willem Dafoe might just be one of my favorite actors, purely based off of, like, how much joy it brings him, like, performing.
Oh yeah, he is amazing. If you liked him in his A24 film, he was in another one called The Florida Project. It's a drama, really good, really great film where he kind of gives like shelter to this family in this apartment building. It's hard to explain, but it's a very sad and very good movie. Willem Dafoe does a great performance as well.
Yeah.
So what do we got a podcast next? Not this Wednesday, but the next Wednesday, and then one that following Sunday.
I believe so. So, yeah, we're doing a week off, I think.
Yeah, we've got.
Oh wait, weren't we gonna do something for Friday the 13th since it's coming up this
Oh,
year?
we have had no preparation for
We
that.
haven't, not the movies, I mean, but like Friday the 13th is like actually
we
it's
um apparently we have our schedule is really off. Don't get mad. We did not have a podcast scheduled tonight. I was wrong. It was it was supposed to be the 11th.
this guy.
We're gonna have to redo the schedule. It's fine. It's been a week since the last one. We did the last one what Wednesday,
Yeah.
so it's been like 5. It's fine.
Yeah, we'll
Or
get there.
4 days or however long it's been. It's fine. You guys get more content. 2 of our longest episodes in a while. I do believe this one is our longest.
It's about to be if we keep going.
I think it passed it. I think the last one was 2 hours, 8 minutes. This one's 2 hours, 10.
Well, we also got to add editing time because it does
Oh,
change
that's
up when
right.
I
I had a piss break.
yeah.
That's right.
Plus the 2 minutes that we usually do for our startup. So,
That's true. It'll be close. Well, you add your intro for
yep,
the audio
which
listeners.
is like 8 seconds.
8 seconds is 8 seconds. That's what the
Something
guys say.
anyway.
Thank you guys so much for being here, chatting with us, watching it live. Audio listeners, YouTube listeners, wherever you find the podcast, thank you so much for tuning in. It means the world to us. I love sitting here and talking about movies, TV
Yeah.
shows, anime, gaming with Mr. Toast here. It is a blast every
Yeah.
time
Every
we.
week I love going on to check our statistics and seeing how many new downloads we have, how many new listeners we have in different areas of the world.
Yes,
Especially as of recent, because we've been seeing downloads in more downloads in Belgium, more in the UK, one in Ukraine. It's there. We're spreading around, and it's pretty awesome to see that, and we're so glad that you guys have been around to watch and listen.
yes, yes. It means the world to us. You guys are wonderful. I'm getting emotional. I do love doing this, and it gives me an excuse to talk about my most favorite thing in the world, which is film. And that is what I live and breathe is film.
Yeah.
And
So
just getting
as
out, kind of
uh
ran about it for an hour.
and it's a really interesting thing because like um by doing this podcast we get to share more films with you guys, and a big thing with it as well is I would not be traditionally watching these movies if we weren't doing this podcast, so you get to introduce me to this stuff too.
Yes, all four of well, not counting the Lighthouse, the 3 films that we watched this week, Climax, Bodies, 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 and X were all rewatches for me and first viewings for Mr. Toast here, which just makes it that much more interesting getting to expose him to some of this stuff and expose some of you guys to some of this stuff too. Um, Art is beautiful and art needs to be protected. It is one of the most important things in the world, and it is truly, as they say, art imitates life.
Yep.
Um,
Additionally, if you haven't already, please start your own physical media collection.
Yeah, that's a big thing. You never know when it's going to be taken off your streaming services. You never know when you won't be able to download something anymore, or you bought something online and suddenly that shop isn't.
Yep.
isn't available
It's
anymore.
one of the most annoying things I've ever gone through. Where this is actually a little fun short story before we wrap up. But I was originally going to watch Heat. It's a bank heist movie. I was originally going to watch that movie 3 years ago. Then I finally was like, I'm going to sit down and watch Heat. It wasn't on Netflix anymore. I didn't own a physical copy of it. Didn't get to watch it.
Yep. It happens all the time. I remember it's just there's so many things like you go to watch it and you're like shit, but that I have a decently sized physical media collection, and it's very nice to just be able to grab these films and be like, I have this. We're gonna do this for the podcast, you know.
Yep.
So yeah, that's a very important message. Thank you for that, Mr. Toast. That
Yep.
that is that is very important. And one final thank you to everybody. Thank you so much for watching. We will be back sometime in the next week. Maybe it'll be next Sunday. Maybe it'll be next Wednesday, like a Wednesday from this one. I'm not sure. We've got plenty more Spooktober episodes coming out for you. A whole month long, we're going to be doing horror, and we can't wait to see you guys in the next.
Yep. It's been fantastic having you guys here this evening. Or for our audio listeners or YouTube listeners, it's been fantastic just having you around in general. All
Yes.
right, everybody. You all have a fantastic night and take care.